It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the three films that wrap up the month of May 2008 on May 30th. The biggest blockbuster of the bunch, not a good movie, but the other films, so-so. But we'll get to those in a second here. But let's talk about that big blockbuster that came out this weekend. The biggest new release of the weekend, Sarah Jessica Parker, Kim Cattrall, Cynthia Nixon, and Kristen Davis returning in Sex and the City, the movie. So the trailer for it really doesn't look that different from the television series. I mean, it literally looks like a big screen adaptation of the TV show, but the more you delve into this movie and the more you actually see the film, the moment you realize, wow, this is nothing like the movie at all, the TV series at all. So after moving in together in an impossibly beautiful New York apartment, Carrie Bradshaw, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Mr. Big, played by Chris Noth, make a rather arbitrary decision to get married. The wedding itself proves to be anything but a hasty affair. The guest list quickly blossoms from 75 to 200 guests, and Carrie's simple, labelless wedding gown gives way to an enormous creation that will make her look like a gigantic cream puff. An upcoming photo spread in Vogue puts the event, which will take place at the New York Public Library, squarely in the public eye. Meanwhile, Carrie's girlfriend Samantha, the sex pot, Charlotte the sweet naive, and Miranda, the rigid perfectionist, could not be happier. At least they could be happier for Carrie. Charlotte still has the unrealized hope of getting pregnant. Samantha is finding a loving, committed relationship more grueling than she could have imagined, and Miranda unwillingly lets her own unhappiness, created when Steve admits to cheating on her just once, spoil Carrie's. And after a heated encounter with Steve, she happens to spot Mr. Big and tells him he's crazy to get married. She really is only thinking of her own marriage, but her angry remarks gets Mr. Big to thinking. And I guess to the movie's credit, it's not as bad as the second movie. The second movie is absolutely abysmal, but when you watch this movie, it's pretty clear when you watch this film, this was not made by the same people that made this. This doesn't feel like it was made by the same people who made the TV show, because the original Sex and the City TV show was not just about, it was not just about the ladies and their whatever dress they were wearing and the fact that they're so shallow and they're in New York so they feel like they're higher than everybody else. But no, they were characters in the television show. New York City was a character in the television show. Here, it feels like they've regressed everything down to make a safe, marketable movie, which the more I realized it, the more I'm starting to realize that, HBO shows probably should not be on the big screen, especially if you're trying to go for that safe, marketable audience in general. This has the same problems with the Entourage movie, and I love the show Entourage, and when I saw the movie, I was completely let down by it because it felt like a lot of the same things with the Sex and the City movie. It felt like they were truncating it down, making these characters dumber than they were when the series ended. They weren't the same characters they were when the show ended. They weren't in better places. They really do feel like they've regressed down because the people behind this are afraid to let the characters grow up. And that was the problem with the Entourage movie, and it's definitely here in the Sex and the City movie too. I mean, you could tell the focus on this was, let's make sure we get these ladies the best outfits we can to put them on, and have people go like, oh my god, I love your dress and all that type of stuff. That's what this movie really feels like. It's not made for the people who gave their 6 years to the Sex and the City TV show. This is made for people. I've talked about this type of movie before. This is the type of movie that you get your gal pals out for. You put on your nice dresses, your cocktail dresses, your nice high heel shoes, and you go into a movie theater and you sneak in a bottle of champagne and wine and all that. And you talk about other things besides and you talk about do other things that are not related to the movie you're watching. And then when the movie's over, you get home and your husband's just like, so how was the movie? And you're like, wait, did I see a movie? Like, that's what it really feels like with Sex and the City. At least in the movie, because, yeah, the comedy in here is abysmally bad at times. I mean, it's like the writer of this movie, who was one of the writers on the show, and also the director, Michael Patrick King, it's like that he thought, what's the next direction to take Sex and the City in terms of a big screen movie? How about comedy and jokes that are on the same level of a really bad Adam Sandler movie? That's what this feels like. There's parts in here where they throw in pointless, gross-out jokes that make no sense. That scene where, what's her name? Samantha is talking to Miranda about, geez, wax much. Like, apparently they decided to show that she never shaves, and there's like a growing like bush underneath whatever. underneath Cynthia Nixon's nether regions, her vagina, if you will. But not only that, but there's a running gag where a dog is literally humping the bejesus out of a pillow, and they don't just do this once; they do it several times all throughout the movie because the movie thinks it's so goddamn funny, and it's not. Like, it's absolutely not funny. It wasn't funny the first time, and it's not funny the 20th time you do it in this movie. And then, let's reinforce in some stereotypes, too. Let's have Jennifer Hudson in her first major movie since winning the Oscar for Dreamgirls. Let's make her the magical, mystical Negro of the movie, because that's exactly what she is. She serves no purpose but to help Sarah Jessica Parker's character, and her character is not well written at all, and it's a waste of a really good actress. And Jennifer Hudson, Candice Bergen is in this movie, and she's completely wasted. Let's take the characters that we love from the show and make them complete assholes for no reason whatsoever, or just make them unlikable and undetestable and have them do things that they never did in the television series. Miranda's husband cheats on her, and the way that they play it in this movie is just so preposterous and so ridiculous, and it infuriated me, this movie, but at times there is still a little bit of the magic that was left in the television series, but at the same time, it's a movie that feels like they're regurgitating something that didn't need to be brought back, and it's a film that doesn't really add anything to it. Like with the Simpsons movie, you could see what they were adding to it. You know, the Bob's Burgers movie. That movie came out, didn't seem like it was really adding anything to it, but it helped make the TV show become something much more. The Bob's Burgers TV show is much better now since the movie came out. Not to say the show was bad to begin with, but the show has been much more entertaining. The stories have gotten much more interesting. The characters evolved after the movie came out. Nobody evolves in these movies. They regress. And if you thought this was bad, wait until you see the second movie. The second movie is the worst at it. But yeah. So, like I said, this is a terrible movie. This is not a very good film, but it's at least trying to be Sex and the City, unlike the sequel. But maybe it just goes to show that HBO shows maybe should not make the jump to the big screen. If they're going to do a Sex and the City movie, do it on HBO. Do it on a network that lets you have as much creative control as you want to. Don't take it to a studio where you have to do what they tell you to do. They have to mandate specific things that you can and can't do, and force them to make the comedy even lazier. Like this isn't even Sex and the City style comedy. Like, this film is a mess of a movie, and I don't know if it's the director or the fact that Darren Star was nowhere near this project, because I think Darren Star was the reason why the show worked as well as it did, because once you took him out of the equation, this franchise just fell off quickly. And it's a bad movie. It's a really terrible film. Avoid Sex and the City like the plague. The movie. TV show, yeah, watch that show. It still holds up after all these years. But so that's Sex and the City. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie we have here, and that is Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman in The Strangers. Speaking of things that probably should have been left alone after the first thing they did, The Strangers. Another movie that a pretty underrated little horror film where you follow a couple played by Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman who stay at a vacation home and is disrupted by three masked intruders who infiltrate their home one night. And it's based on a real-life events where you have stuff like the murder-homicide of the Manson family Tate murders, a series of break-ins that occurred in the director Brian Bertino's neighborhood as a child. And some people have even said that there's a lot of similarities to the Kettle Cabin murders that occurred in Kettle, California in '81. But he doesn't cite this as a reference overall. But yeah, it's amazing how this movie still holds up. And it works because of the tension and the atmosphere. I think that really is what carries the film overall. Yeah, it's a generic storyline that's been done before. You know, the home invasion and all that type of stuff. It's been something that's been done before. But a director like Brian Bertino, what he adds to the table with this film is the atmosphere. The cinematography, I think, works very well, and that sense of dread and fear, like you're standing there in a room and you think nobody's behind you, and then all of a sudden you look in the background and you see this weird looking thing behind you. I talked about it with the Batman just not too long ago. That great opening shot of the movie where you see the Riddler coming out of nowhere. That's a great jump scare that without having to do the typical jump scare techniques. And in this movie, they definitely do that. I do think these intruders are very threatening. They can come off as cartoonish at times, but their goal is there. Like, they come off as legitimately terrifying at times here. And yeah, it's a very intense movie, and I think it works very well to those advantages. It even has a great cliffhanger where, somebody finds Liv Tyler's character. Excuse me. They find Liv Tyler's character unconscious, and then the movie ends with her screaming at the top of her lungs, and that's how the movie ends. Like, it's a memory of all the things that have just happened, and that's a perfect way to end that movie in particular. It's like, leave the audience wanting more, but don't necessarily hype up a sequel coming forward, because let's be honest, anything that's come after this, that's the stuff you can avoid. The sequel that came out 10 years later doesn't even bother to follow the events of this movie. And then, for some reason, Rennie Harlow decided to say, I'm gonna do this again, but we're not just gonna do a sequel. No. We need to do a trilogy. And guess what? That first film he did was pretty terrible. I mean, but this movie just works on its own. It works on its own merits. It doesn't have to be a franchise film. It's a film that can work with one simple concept, and it works as a standalone film. It works as it is. Like I said, the script overall is kind of a mediocre mess, but the thing that makes it work are the tension-filled scenes, are the scary moments, the atmosphere, the cinematography. I mean, the moments that you will remember forever with that stuff. It's a really entertaining film, and yeah, it's definitely a film with a lot of flaws to it, but it's a film I actually would say I'd recommend checking out. If you want a little bit of a good psychological horror film, this works very well. If the script had been better, this would definitely be up there with some of the better ones, but as it is, it's a good movie. It's one I'd recommend. So with all that said, let's go ahead and move on to the last film we have here, Danny McBride, starring in The Foot Fist Way. God, I wish I could show you the rest of that trailer because it's so good, but unfortunately, Andrew WK's It's Time to Party, which makes that trailer worth it, is playing in the background, and I know YouTube's copyright laws, so I'm not even going to bother doing it, but look for that trailer. It's a really good trailer. But as you can see, Danny McBride plays an inept Taekwondo instructor struggling with marital troubles and an unhealthy obsession with a fellow Taekwondo enthusiast, Chuck the Truck Wallace. And this was film that was made before he was seen in Hot Rod, because Hot Rod was the first time I saw him in anything, and he was in a lot of other movies too that came out around that time. But Hot Rod was the first thing I ever saw him in. This was filmed back in 2006, I believe. And you have him. You have Ben Best, who is I think I've seen him somewhere before. He's like a writer musician. But you also see Colette Wolfe, who's been in a lot of other stuff too. And the director of this, and of course him and Danny McBride went on to do Eastbound and Down, which is a great show. And a lot of the elements of what makes that show great are played into this movie. This is a very fun film, a very funny comedy. Danny McBride shows a lot of potential as a leading actor in this movie. He makes it work very well here, and it's a very simple concept. It's a very small-budgeted movie. They were putting this out hoping that it was going to be another Napoleon Dynamite success, and I don't think this is as good as Napoleon Dynamite is, but it's still a really funny movie regardless. It's very in-your-face. It's rated R for a reason, and it's just a ton of fun to watch. I just love the absurdity and the craziness that goes on throughout the course of the film. It's a great movie, man. It's a really, really fun, little underrated gem of a film. If you like comedies like Hot Rod, like these stupid comedies like the Will Ferrell comedies, this is definitely one that deserves to be checked out. It's a really good film. I really enjoyed the hell out of it. One I highly recommend checking out, The Foot Fist Way. And so with all that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies, and the next time we meet, we'll take a look at 3 more summer movies, including the big surprise of the weekend of the summer, Jack Black and DreamWorks Animation's Kung Fu Panda. Another surprise, too, Adam Sandler starring in a really good underrated comedy, You Don't Mess with a Zohan. And another good comedy on this list here, a more smaller comedy, John C. Reilly and Sean William Scott starring in The Promotion. We'll take a look at those 3 movies. That'll be coming up on tomorrow's show. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please go ahead and hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode. Also, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, notification button, and the bell. That's when you get updates on when new videos come out, and we do post new videos here every day. So with all that said, I will be off. I will see you guys next time, and until then, as always, thank you. Take care. Good night. Whatever. I'll see you next time. I'm completely at a loss of words right now for some reason.